everyone, it's He Speaks Freely, and I am just opposite the BBC headquarters in central London, where Turning Point UK have made a small albeit passionate protest against the defamation and libellous content coming from the BBC regarding Charlie Kirk. Now, even though this is a protest outside the BBC, I think that this is just a broad message to go to all of the mainstream and establishment media about the defamation of any right-leaning activist or anyone that doesn't go along with their own narrative. I mean, even hours after Charlie Kirk was assassinated, we had the establishment media reporting the assassination of a right-wing activist, a far-right activist, and some even going so far as to call him a hate preacher. So it'd be really interesting to see what people think about that, how strong their feelings are against this, and yeah, just the general consensus of how Charlie Kirk's legacy is going to affect us all now in the UK.
Well, firstly, it's kind of demonstrating that Turning Point UK only really receives numbers if we do chapter events and events at universities, which I've already in the process of setting up. So that's one of the key takeaways. Of course, it was very passionate, but it wasn't as big as previous vigils, and that was obviously because it was off the cusp of Turning Point USA.
BBC! 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 BBC!
Only the BBC could get away with, let me show you this, guys. I mean, obviously people would already know about this, but just in case if you don't, this statue right outside the BBC was by an artist named Eric Gill, who was a paedophile. Only the BBC would support a statue like that.
It's not even the BBC, it was Channel 4, ITV, it was all the other organisations which immediately after announcing the death of Charlie Kirk labelled him as the assassination of the far-right activist Mr. Kirk. So we either need redactions or apologies, because obviously that is completely disrespectful.
The worst part is when we are violently attacked by Antifa or Socialist Workers' Party thugs, the BBC will either not report on it, or if they do, they will lie and twist the narrative in their coverage in favour of the violent leftists.
Even for someone that I vehemently disagree with, I would never label them with extreme titles. I would have a degree of, well, let's just allow this to simmer a bit, let's be charitable. Then afterwards, after we more reflect on his legacy, not just immediately announcing his death, will we speak about his political ideology, whether it was too extreme in the public eye. But for you to immediately do it is almost like it's intentional. It's either crafting a narrative to make it sure that people don't have sympathy for a man that honestly was very milquetoast in his approach when it comes to conservatism.
It is outrageous that the once prestigious and once respected BBC is no longer neutral and has decided to push a narrative that actively works against the British people. Up next we have a fantastic young speaker. Let's hear it for the Turning Point Youth Ambassador, Young Bob.
We're picking up the bloodied microphone of Charlie Kirk, and unfortunately the first debate that has to be said is whether a poor man's death was justified.
Do you think that it's fair that the mainstream media and establishment media don't face the same repercussions and cancellations that citizen journalists do?
Yeah, so I mean, even with the most biggest ones, so you have recently Candace Owens labelling the president for the French, his wife, as transgender. I mean, of course that should be met with a defamation lawsuit if it turns out that he intentionally knew that wasn't the case. But for legacy media, they're not held to the same standard, and that's because they've kind of watered down this definition of being far right and what it actually means. I mean, if I were to call anyone here far right, I don't even think they would respond in such a way, because they've so prone themselves in terms of their mind to that word. It doesn't actually associate with anything too powerful or too risky.
And the media machine fueling this narrative is the British Broadcasting Society and the legacy media, pushing the libellous lie that an individual, pushing for the American dream, for people to take up the Christian cross, start a business and marry and have children. This sort of mundane conservatism was pushed as a fascist trait.
So if I were to call you far right, for example, all you're going to say is that, well, you might even have to a degree brainwash yourself in actually believing you are, and just the word reflects something that isn't what it historically reflected, right? Because what they're trying to do by inducing that is black shirts, Oswald Mosley, 1945 sort of action, and that is being used by the left to kind of demoralise us and deplatform us.
Now, if the BBC won't be non-biased in their reporting, why do we have to be held to the same standard? If I were to libel my opposition as communists, as Marxists, as individuals who knew nothing about the things that they peddle, I would be labelled as a bad actor.
I mean, at Turning Point, for example, we weren't allowed to do chapter events and speaking events because we would immediately, well, firstly, David Lamman, immediately after we launched our Turning Point UK, started saying that we're xenophobic and Islamophobic, even though we hadn't even said anything before our launch. So it's used as a tactic to censor us and slow our process.
But unfortunately, Conservatives talking in the UK are on unequal footing. There have been many attempts by Turning Point UK to do chapters and activism within university campuses. But what we're met with is the highest degree of violence that the left would have never been faced with.
So Hannah, obviously we would have got the consensus of why you're here from your speech.
So Charlie Kirk was not far right. He was a family man. He preached faith and he preached freedom. That is not far right. Far right is something like Nick Fuentes. Charlie Kirk was a moderate.
Could you just tell everyone how important it is to come out to these things?
It's important because you signal two things. You tell these institutions we're not lazy and bored and distracted with our boring lives. We're going to turn up and we're going to say something, we're going to be loud about it peacefully.
And when people like the BBC propagandize to millions of people in this country, disseminating to not just to the UK, but the whole world, you are directly responsible for creating the false perception in millions of people that we are extremists or that we're bigoted.
And secondly, it's a spiritual thing as well. When you turn up in the physical realm, in the supernatural realm, you're telling God that this matters to us, that we want you back in this country, and God will hear those prayers. He listens to the prayers of the righteous, so that's why I think it's important.
Now, more than Charlie wants you to be at a protest, he wants you to get involved, he wants you to go to church, right? The St. George's flag is inspired by the crucifix, the Jesus Christ cross, where he died. This country, I don't care what they say, is a Christian country.
Amen.
It's a Christian country, everyone. We go to protest and we go to church. I was there last Sunday, I'll be there this Sunday, and every Sunday after that. In the kids' church, volunteering with the kids. It's not on the media team, it's not with the ushers, because this is a Christian country. We don't just turn up when somebody dies, we keep turning up to keep spreading our values and keep spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ.
And you mentioned that we're in a spiritual war. Do you think that the establishment purposefully tries to desecrate its own people against God?
Absolutely. Absolutely, because the reason they fear God is because God is the reason that we will listen to our Creator and not the government. And anytime there's an authority greater than government, that's a threat to them, because then they can't control us. Now we're not going to get those stupid jabs, because my pastor told me, and I listen to my pastor more than I listen to you. More than I listen to Keir Starmer. I don't know who Keir Starmer is, and I do not believe that he's acting in my best interests. And Christians are waking up across the globe, and they're realising this, especially with that jab, that bloody jab.
Charlie Kirk wants you to go to church. And these two things, I'm going to leave you with this, these two things that you signal when you turn up at these protests like this, two things. Number one, you are not lazy and bored and distracted by the mundane routine of your regular boring lives. You will turn up and do something about it. When you stand outside these institutions, that's exactly what you do.
I mean, COVID was really the last time we really saw our freedoms and liberties get completely taken away from us in the name of, health and safety and all these things. Do you think that the digital ID is going to be the next thing that we see in similar themes? Do you have any thoughts on it?
I do have thoughts. I mean, every Christian's saying it's the beast system. I don't know. I don't know if they're going to get over 1 million petitions, something like that. I don't know if they're going to get it through. I think Keir Starmer's going to lose his job. As he should, before that could ever happen. And that's the thing, that's the purpose of petitions and protesting. It does something. They push back and they have to listen to us. No matter how big or small you might think it is, it can pick up traction very quickly, and before you know it, we've got what we want.
Number two, which really should be number one, you are signaling to God that you're serious about wanting him back in this country. You're not just saying, oh no, what's going on in this world, it's so terrible. Reshare, retweet, like, comment, subscribe. You are turning up in the physical locations, which does something in the spiritual realm. They encircled Jericho for 7 days, and they shouted, and the whole walls collapsed. In the Bible, read the Bible. being physically present and spiritually present matters in these battles, because it's not the BBC we're up against. This is a spiritual battle.
So we have Jack, the CEO of Turning Point UK. Now, what did you think of the turnout and how did this evening go?
Really happy with the turnout. Nice to see the momentum still building. When we did our first Turning Point demo, I think there was something like 20 of us and about 700 lefties opposite. Whereas now we're coming out in good numbers. There's about 60 people here, which is great. And it's nice that that momentum's still going on. I think Charlie's inspired a lot of people who historically haven't been involved in politics to actually think, no, now's the time to step forward and do something. We've all got to pick up Charlie's mic and we've got to take our country back.
Absolutely. What do you think it says about the establishment that the mainstream media seems to be able to get away with libellous claims that citizen journalists and even people just tweeting can't get away with?
Someone went to prison because they called Anna Soubry a Nazi. I get called Nazi every time we do these demos and everything. When I've tried to press charges or query online individuals to sue them for libellous accusations, you're told you probably won't win in court. Yet we see whenever the left try and sue someone on the right for like what happened to Lawrence Fox, they tend to win. And it's one of those things where two-tiered justice is not just the criminal element, it's embedded throughout our society, where actually everything, whether you call it Long March to the institutions, whether it's just weaponised unions, is against the British patriot. And that's why we've all got to speak up, we've all got to report on things and say enough is enough.
And do you think that the sad death of Charlie Kirk is going to, like people have been saying, promote people to go to church, have the strong family traditional unit that we've been missing in this country?
I hope so. Charlie was a very devout Christian, and I know he wouldn't expect everyone to be as devout as he was, but I hopefully think people look at the type of life he lived. You can only see it as everything falling into place as part of God's plan, really, in terms of how successful he was. He started Turning Point USA off from his parents' garage, and then it turned into a multi-million-dollar entity which helped thousands of people, if not tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people across America, millions across the world. And I hope people look at Charlie's message and they think, everyone can have that. Everyone can have that happiness. Everyone can have that kindness. It starts by going to church.
Yeah. And just as the last question, just in case if I don't get the opportunity to ask you again, I was wondering if you had any thoughts on digital ID. I'm sure people would like to know. Obviously, everyone's talking about it at the moment.
So digital ID as a concept, if it was just a digital passport, I don't think it would be a problem. But the problem is you can't trust the state with any power. So the moment it's, now you need digital ID to work. What's the next stage? When you go to a protest, let's check your digital ID. Now you're not allowed to buy groceries. Now you're not allowed to go on holiday. You've already been on holiday 2 times a year. It's tied to digital ID. You can't go again. I think we're seeing the start of something which could resemble the Chinese social credit system, and that is incredibly worrying. We're already seeing people being penalised, people losing bank accounts in this country because of their political views. Imagine now we start moving to a digital currency and a mandatory digital ID. It's incredibly worrying. And we won't, they claim it's to tackle illegal migration. You don't need digital ID to tackle illegal migration. I'm from Portsmouth. I can show you where the illegal migrants work. The police know, the authorities know where these people work. They're just finding more and more excuses not to go after them, and they'll twist it like they did with Prevent. Prevent was set up quite admirably. It was designed to tackle radical Islamic extremism. It's very rarely used for that, and all they did was go after kids who misgendered people or had strong views about conservatism or patriotism. So you can't trust Labour with this power, you can't trust the establishment with this power.
Okay, so a short demonstration today. We've had 3 speakers. We had Freethinker Hannah, we had Jack, CEO of Turning Point UK, and we had young Bob. All great speeches, and there was a huge banner representing Charlie Kirk and a quote saying, "Bullets will not silence us." So the message being sent to the BBC and the rest of the establishment media is a clear one. We will not back down, and we will not be ashamed of our opinions, and we will not allow you to defame us to the point where it allows other extremists to take violent action. If all of us are subject to the online harms bill and citizen journalists are being cancelled the moment they go against the left-wing narrative, then the BBC and the establishment media should be held to the same account. We've had some amazing speeches and some amazing interviews. Thank you all so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.